Okay, we're going to begin our presentation today. This is the ISO 9001-2015, Preparing for a Successful Transition webinar. My name is Joseph Krolikowski, and I am the Technical Director of Perry Johnson Registrars. Couple of technical notes here. All participants are in mute. However, we do want to take as many questions as you have. Please use the question portion of the dashboard. We will absolutely answer your questions and make sure that you have had every chance to ask what you need to know about our presentation today. Overview of our topics. We're going to discuss where the standards come from. We're going to examine why the changes were so dramatic with the 2015 version. We'll revisit the timeline, have a look at the key changes, answer what I'm sure for many of you is a key question. Do you have to overhaul your system? We've got an FAQ section based on past presentations. Perhaps some of your questions will be answered there. Some final points, and then absolutely we will make time for your questions. Now the ISO, the letters ISO, they stand for International Organization for Standardization. And what the ISO is, you can think of it as a collective. It's made up of numerous international members, and the purpose of the ISO is to publish standards that are deemed necessary or where industries express a desire for an international standard. Now each of those standards is written by a technical committee or a TC. And in the case of ISO 9001, the assigned committee is TC 176. Now, because ISO 9001 is such a widely used standard, TC 176 is a fairly large committee, and it includes membership from each of the major industrialized nations. Our representatives here in the United States are taken from the American National Standards Institute, or ANSI. Now, as to why the changes were so dramatic with this rewrite, there were a number of things that they wanted to accomplish, and they recognized the industries that use ISO, those industries have evolved, and they're going to continue to evolve. And they wanted to make sure that ISO 9001 was robust enough to keep up with the industries that use it. Obviously, they want to see ISO 9001 continue to grow in terms of which industries are using it, which sectors are using it. They made a targeted effort to simplify the language that was used. Obviously, they would very much like to see consistency between auditors, consistency between certification bodies, and that all begins with the words that are used in the standard, of course. And a very important goal for the ISO on this go-round is they wanted to see an improvement in the cross-compatibility between the standards. We're going to be learning today about a common structure that's been introduced, and that's going to help companies that have more than one certification. There's a lot of companies out there that have 2, 3, or even 4 or more certifications, and this rewrite of the standard is intended to help those kinds of companies keep things as straightforward as possible. The chairperson of the TC 176 committee, a gentleman by the name of Nigel Croft, when the standard was under development, he was asked, what is it that you're trying to accomplish with this new version of ISO? And he indicated that there were 3 key features that the committee wanted the standard to have. First, the process approach. Processes, of course, have been a key aspect of quality management certification going all the way back to the 2000 version of ISO 9001. Processes, of course, come with a whole host of expectations, that we manage our processes, that the things we do are based on results, that we are systematic in what we do. That is very similar to the second ideal that was expressed, and that, of course, is plan, do, check, act. The whole idea of planning out your processes, having controls for your processes, reviewing your processes, and then taking action based on the results of those reviews. Those two ideals have both been around since the 2000 version of ISO 9001, and they're still very much a part of how the 2015 version of ISO was written. The new idea, although in our opinion it is not such a new idea, is the idea of risk-based thinking, the whole concept of preventing undesirable outcomes. We've got a large section today on risk and risk management that I think is going to help some of you kind of wrap your hands around this concept and what's expected of you. Let's take a look at the timeline and kind of bring us up to date on where we're at. We'll begin with the past dates. This development effort goes all the way back, believe it or not, to 2012. And the first important step was taken in June of 2013 when we saw the issuance of the committee draft. Now that document was a fairly limited distribution. Pretty much the committee members only received it. In May of 2014, we saw the publication of the Draft International Standard, or DIS. That document actually was very close to what became the final standard and gave way to the final draft, the FDIS, which we saw this past July. Of course, we now have the new standard. It was published in September, right on time, in accordance with what was the original established timeline. Now, looking ahead, the only crucial date that lies ahead for us is the expiry of ISO 9001-2008, and that is, of course, going to be in September of 2018. And by then, all of you that are certified to ISO 9001-2008 need to have successfully transitioned to the new standard. And so the new standard is here. It was published on September 15th of 2015. It is available for purchase directly from the ISO. Here in the United States, you would go to the ANSI website, www.ansi.org, and then follow the links for purchasing a copy of the standard. It represents the culmination of nearly 3.5 years of work, going all the way back to the issuance of Annex SL back in 2012, and we're going to be discussing Annex SL here in just a bit. As I mentioned, the clock is ticking on ISO 9001-2008. By virtue of 9001-2015 being published on September 15th, the official cutoff for 9001-2008 has been established as September 14th, 2018. That is the last date that 9001-2008 will be considered a viable standard. Now, PJR has established a policy on the cutoff of 9001-2008 auditing. That's actually been provided in the FAQ document that we have on our website at www.pjr.com, and there's actually a link right here that you can follow. Now, back in May of this year, our management team met to discuss whether we were going to need additional audit time to properly assess a quality management system transitioning from ISO 2008 to ISO 2015. And we concluded that for most companies, a small amount of additional time would be sufficient. We are going to be advising each of our clients on a case-by-case basis on what the additional time is going to be. Now, as to what are the key changes, any discussion of ISO 9001-2015 must begin with an examination of Annex SL. Annex SL has been called the HighLevel Outline. It's been called Annex XL. And as the name implies, it is a part of a larger publication. The ISO has a very special document that it uses called Directives Part 1, Consolidated ISO Supplement Procedures Specific to ISO. It is, as the title implies, a standard on how to write standards. And Directives Part 1 is, it's actually something that you can view. I've provided a link here. It's a lengthy document. It covers all of the phases that they have to go through. It covers voting protocol and things of this nature. But Annex SL is a portion of this large document. And what it does is it provides a 10-section blueprint. These are mandatory sections that ISO has to use now for all of the various standards that it has published. Now, Annex SL, for its part, it was written back in 2012. It was drafted by the Joint Technical Coordination Group. And it's from Annex SL that we get these common terms and core definitions. You think about some of the terms that ISO 9001 uses: organization, supplier, what is a process, and so forth. Well, these are terms that are used by all of the other standards. So why wouldn't we have a common way of presenting those requirements in ISO 14001 or in ISO 50001 and so forth? Now, the eventual plan, as we understand it, is that all of the ISO standards will be transitioned to the Annex SL structure probably by 2016, although it's possible that there will be a couple of stragglers that stretch out into 2017. But it is the plan that every single one of the ISO standards will follow this 10-section format. What that's going to do, obviously, is it's going to mean that if a company has more than one certification, in the past, if a company wanted, for example, ISO 9001 and ISO 14001, those companies often concluded that the only way that they could do it was to have two sets of documentation, one for ISO 9001 and one for ISO 14001. Now, obviously, that's a lot of work, and it made the prospect of having multiple certifications a little daunting to the average company. Well, the ISO wanted to make it less daunting. They wanted it to be a little more natural, and they said, okay, you can have now a common set of requirements so that if, for example, you want to add ISO 14001 or ISO 50001 or ISO 27001, you can incorporate the additional requirements under the same 10 sections, and it should make things a lot easier. So what is the 10-section structure? Let's have a look at it. As before, sections 1, 2, and 3 are non-auditable. Scope is more or less an identification of who ISO 9001 is intended to apply to, which is pretty much everybody. Any type of organization that has processes that transform inputs into outputs can use ISO 9001. Section 2 is called Normative Reference, and it identifies the linkage with ISO 9000, the Fundamentals and Vocabulary Standard. And then Terms and Definitions, which is, at this point, a section without any real content. There are no ISO 9001 specific definitions. So the auditable portion of the standard begins in Section 4. Section 4 is called Context of the Organization, and there's a couple of ideas that are presented here. Figuring out what is this organization all about? What are the external and internal issues for this organization? Who are the interested parties for this organization? What is the scope of our system? What are the processes that make up our system? Those are all things that are discussed in Section 4. Section 5 is called Leadership and Commitment. There's a number of things here that should look very familiar. We have an establishment of a quality policy defining the roles within the organization, responsibility and authority. Section 6 is called Planning, and planning in this instance is more or less a two-part item. We have risks here. This is the primary place where risks are discussed. We also have quality objectives, and quality objectives have gotten a couple of tweaks in this 2015 version. Section 7 is called Support, and again there's quite a bit of items here that should be familiar. We have competency, resources, communication. We have the new term, documented information. We'll be discussing that in just a bit. So if you take these first 4 auditable sections, 4, 5, 6, and 7, I want you to think of these as foundation. These items together represent the foundation of an effective quality management system, very much in the same spirit that sections 4, 5, and 6 do in ISO 9001-2008. Now, the most important requirements that the standard represents are the ones that are found in Section 8. Section 8 is called Operation, and it is all of the day-to-day activities that make up a quality system. All of the familiar things are here. Selling the product, purchasing things that you need for the product, controlling your production process, all of those requirements are here. And they flow in a very natural fashion. We're going to be examining some of the new questions that are raised by this section in just a bit. The standard then concludes with sections 9 and 10. These are called Performance Evaluation and Improvement. And again, some familiar territory here. Internal audits are here. Management review is here. The corrective action process is here. These two items taken together can be thought of as, okay, we've set a foundation for our system. We have our day-to-day activities in Section 8. Sections 9 and 10 are all of the various methods by which you're going to measure the effectiveness of your system, of your processes, and take the efforts needed to achieve improvement. So again, a very similar approach to what we had in 9001-2008. 4, 5, and 6, Foundation. Section 7, Day-to-day. Section 8, Monitoring, Measurement, and Improvement. Let's dig a little deeper and get a sense of what the new content is that's represented by 9001-2015. And we may as well start with risk. I'm sure that that is, for many of you, the scary new requirement. What are we going to do to meet this requirement? Risk as a term, it's actually used 16 times in the auditable portion of 9001-2015. What you need to remember about risk is that it's being viewed as a system-wide strategy, very much in the same light that continual improvement was when 9001-2000 was published. You may remember at the time that the idea was that continual improvement was something that affected all processes. Well, in this instance, that's how they're viewing risk management and risk-based thinking. It is a system-wide item. It affects all of your processes. Now, one of the things that's been mentioned a few times, and a little bit later I'll even show you where it's been written into the standard itself, you're not required to have a formal or heavily structured risk management process. What you're required to do is show the auditors, explain to the auditors how risk aversion and risk-based thinking is a part of your existing processes. And there's a number of things that you're probably already doing that are going to help you with that. Let's take a look at the actual verbiage as it appears in the standard itself. It states, it's a two-part section. 611 states, when you're planning for the system, you need to consider the issues that are referred to in 4.1. Now, that's both external and internal issues, and the requirements that are referred to in 4.2. Those are the ones that are raised by your interested parties. Now, once you've done all that, you need to determine the risks and the opportunities. And you'll note that both of those terms are used there. This is not just avoiding bad things. This is taking advantage of opportunities to improve or to enhance things that are working. So determine the risks and opportunities that need to be addressed to do what? Well, first of all, to give assurance that your quality system can do what it's supposed to do, to enhance things that are desirable, to prevent or reduce things that are undesirable, and ultimately, by all of those efforts, to achieve improvement. The standard then goes on to say in 612, you need to plan the actions to address those risks and opportunities, and then how you're going to integrate and implement those actions into your processes. And you'll note the verbiage that's used there. Integrate those things into your processes. And then once you've done so, evaluate the effectiveness of those actions. Actions that are taken to address risks and opportunities need to be proportionate to the potential impact on the conformity of products and services. And that last bit, basically just you need to be sure that you're considering the impact of what you're doing and making sure that you're not, by your efforts, throwing something else off the tracks, so to speak. Now, as I mentioned, there's a number of things that you're no doubt already doing that are going to help you be ready for the risk management requirement. And I've pulled 4 of them out of the standard here. Now, this is by no means a complete list, but this is a good starting point for you in terms of being ready for risk management. First of all, management review, clause 5.6. You're already hopefully in the practice of assessing your system and targeting your improvement efforts accordingly. After all, recommendations for improvement are one of the things that's required under 5.6. In 722, you're expected to review requirements related to your product. You know, are you assessing customer expectations against your capabilities? Are you taking steps to resolve discrepancies? That's obviously, if you don't have a clear picture of what your customer is asking for at the point that you take an order, that could be a problem later. So that is a form of risk-based thinking. Under 622, training, if you're assessing competency needs and taking steps to make sure that your personnel know what you're doing, that's risk management. That's risk-based thinking. And finally, preventive action under 8.5.3. This is probably the most obvious tie-in. If you're taking an assessment of potential problems and taking action to avoid those issues in the first place, obviously that's going to go a long way towards ensuring that you're avoiding problems before they happen and that you are, in fact, engaging in risk-based thinking. Let's look at some of the other changes that have happened to the standard and highlight some things for you. Procedures, records, and documents, those 3 terms, they've all been eliminated in favor of the phrase documented information. Now, as I mentioned, there is a rather helpful explanation for this term, and it's actually taken from the Annex of the standard, Annex A6, where it explains the use of the phrases maintain and retain. So these are kind of the key phrases that you need to look for when you're reading about documented information. Any phrase that says maintain documented information, the organization shall maintain documented information, that is generally understood to be a replacement for past references to things like documents and procedures, quality manual, and so forth. Now, as we'll be emphasizing later, you're not required to have a procedure. You're not required to have a quality manual. But there are a handful of things that you are required to, as the standard says, maintain documented information for. One example of this is clause 4.3. 4.3 states that you need to document what the scope of your quality management system is. That needs to be maintained as documented information. The other phrase, retained documented information, that one is generally understood to be a replacement for all past references to the phrase record. Now, obviously, there's a number of examples of where records are required. One that I've included in my presentation here is clause 9.3.3. which establishes that you need to maintain records of your management review activity. So when you're reading the standard, definitely be on the lookout for the phrases maintain documented information and retain documented information. All references to the term product now read products and services. Really, this was their intention all along. If you read Clause 3 of ISO 9001-2008, it already says that wherever the term product appears, it can also mean service. Obviously, the framers of the standard, they want to ensure that ISO 9001 is seen as not just a product standard, that it is a standard that can be used in any type of business, a business with or a business without a tangible product. Management responsibility, that phrase has become leadership. This pushes the idea that management leads by example and involvement rather than simply directing that activities are performed. The phrase continual improvement has become a part of a larger section. As we saw, Section 10 is called improvement. And the idea here is that continual improvement is one part of an improvement strategy. We can also see improvement through breakthroughs, through reactive changes, through reorganizations, and so forth. Continual improvement is still as important as it ever was, but it has now been recalibrated, as it were, in terms of the role it plays in the larger picture of what we strive for as improvement. Suppliers are now referred to as external providers. Again, this is intended to accommodate service organizations, and it's also intended to be kind of a collective term. Again, one of the annex clauses, this time A8, provides a little bit of an explanation on what they mean by external providers. As you can see, it's not just outside suppliers, but it's also associate companies and anything that involves outsourcing. Now, the 9001-2008 standard already has requirements for your interactions with these other parties, but they were kind of scattered throughout the standard. Outsourcing, you may recall, was found under Section 4.1, supplier interaction under 7.4, and a few other places. So they've pooled these items together and they've put them under the general heading external provider. So it's intended to kind of clean things up just a bit. As I mentioned, ISO 9001-2015 has eliminated the requirements for quality manual, procedures, and work instructions, although work instructions were optional under ISO 9001-2008. Now, a word of caution on this. You can definitely achieve certification without a quality or procedures manual. But you're still going to be required to show that your processes are consistent and effective. So, let's consider the case of a company where they have a procedures manual and it's used twice a year on their semi-annual audits, or it's used for maybe a week or two ahead of the audits. If that's the kind of situation that you find yourself in, if your procedure serves no other purpose but to get you through your audits, then perhaps you don't need it anymore. That's obviously going to be up to you. A lot of companies, maybe if it's all that it's used for is the audit, that's still a good purpose. And as long as it's accurate, there's certainly no harm in maintaining it. But I do want to emphasize, and this is revisited a little bit later in the presentation, if you choose to maintain a procedure for a particular activity, please do bear in mind that even though the standard does not require that you have a procedure, if you choose to have one, the content of that procedure will still be subject to audit. It is admissible as what we call audit criteria. The management representative title has been eliminated from the standard. Now, let's explain this just a bit. It does not mean that the key functions of that party have been eliminated. What it means is that the management of the quality system should not just be on one person's shoulders. It needs to fall to the top management, to the leadership. Now, if an organization feels that they need to appoint a key contact for coordinating corrective action efforts, for welcoming the auditor and so forth, that's completely fine. But the requirement is that we need to see that the leadership team has taken responsibility for running their quality system. That's really why they've eliminated the position of management representative from the content of the standard itself. Also, they've eliminated all mention of permissible exclusions. This has actually had a couple of interesting effects. You are now going to be permitted to claim any item from ISO 9001-2015 as what the standard refers to as non-applicable. Now, what this means is a couple of things. First of all, we're going to be required to verify the validity of your non-applicable designations at each and every audit, which in practice is something we already do anyway. But additionally, you'll note that you're no longer limited to just a particular section for these exemptions. Now, when you start looking at sections 4 and 5 and so forth, it's difficult to conceive a company that might exclude something from those sections, but we've been told that, in theory at least, it's possible. So whatever you're doing at the present time to document your exclusions will more than likely be acceptable for documenting your non-applications. The standard has introduced the term interested parties to the discussion. Now this is actually an Annex SL term, and let's take a quick look at the definition of that item. It is defined as person or organization that can affect, be affected by, or perceive themselves to be affected by a decision or activity. Now that definition then goes on to give the following examples. Customers, owners, people within the organization, suppliers, okay, those are pretty obvious. But then it adds bankers, unions, partners, competitors as possible interested parties. Now, I want to mention that in 4.2 it states that it's up to the organization to determine which of their interested parties are relevant to the quality management system. So again, just because there is a party that could be classified as an interested party, it's still going to be up to the organization to ascertain the relevancy of the quality system. Now, the term interested party, really, it's intended to broaden the scope of who your requirements are coming from. But really, in practice, this is not going to be any different from how most companies do their business anyway. It behooves you to know who your interested parties are and to make sure that you've taken care of them in terms of what you're doing within your system. Okay, we're going to transition to our next section now. We're going to have a look at some key new questions that are being raised by the standard itself. You'll note that most of the key changes are found in sections 4, 5, and 6. And we'll begin with section 4, which asks a couple of interesting new questions. What purpose does the organization serve? Who does it exist for? As we've just finished talking about, who are the interested parties? And does any part of this standard qualify for a non-applicable designation? Under Section 5, leadership, is there a leadership structure evident? Is leadership making itself accountable for the effectiveness of the system? Has leadership made sure that the quality policy and objectives are consistent with the strategic direction of the company? Has the policy been made available to the interested parties? And has the quality system been integrated into business processes? Now, we've had some questions about bullets 3 and 5 as to Are the auditors now going to be looking at our financial books and so forth? The short answer to that is no. We're not going to be digging into your financial records. We are not financial auditors. What it means is your business system and your quality system should be on a shared path. And there's a number of ways that that can be shown. You think about management review meetings. You think about business planning memorandums. You think about things that you've done within your strategic planning. These are all things that can help you show that your business system and quality system are on a shared path. And in terms of bullet number 5, our interpretation has been that this is going to apply primarily to some of the mechanics of the business processes. Things like your documents. Are they revision controlled? The personnel. Do you have competency records for those persons? And so forth. Section 6 asks a couple of key new questions. Have you considered your risks and opportunities? Have you taken actions for those risks and opportunities? And then as it pertains to your quality objectives, have you figured out who's responsible? What is it you're trying to accomplish? Are your objectives relevant to the conformity of your products and the enhancement of customer satisfaction? In Section 7, for the most part, there's not a whole lot of new content, but we do have a key new item under Clause 716, which asks, has the organization considered changing needs and trends against its current competency base and determined what is needed for the future? This is a form, obviously, of risk-based thinking. Section 8, we have concluded, has no significant new content that was not already present in some form in ISO 9001-2008. And that's also the case for Section 9, although it is important to note that within Section 9 you will now find management review. It's been put together with the other measurement activities. And that's also true for Section 10. No significant new content that was not present in some form in 9001-2008. Now, hopefully what we've put across for you with these last few slides is that the changes to the standard really are minimal and manageable. Even the new idea of risk really is not such a new idea if you consider the fact that preventive action has been a part of the 9001 standard since it was first published. And there's a number of other, as we saw, a number of other items that constitute risk-based thinking that you're already doing. So hopefully we've kind of taken the fear out of this new requirement. Let's have a look now at the 9001-2015 standard, kind of cover to cover, give you a sense of what's where and what the purpose of each section is. It begins with section 0.1, where we have an overview statement, more statements on who the standard benefits, risk-based thinking is mentioned, Plan, Do, Check, Act is mentioned, and we have a definition for the 4 key terms. Now this is all kind of rooted in the Annex SL structure, but obviously the critical term here is shall. If we have a shall statement, it indicates a mandatory requirement. Now these other terms, should, may, and can, are going to be of limited concern to you. Obviously shall is the most important term in terms of identifying a mandatory requirement. The standard then continues with section 0.2, where the 7 quality management principles are listed. There is a reference then to the 9000 standard, where those items are given quite a bit more discussion and rationale. In 0.3, we have a discussion of the process approach and a reinforcement of the importance of the process approach. There's also a new graphic that's been drawn up for the process approach that reinforces the Plan, Do, Check, Act methodology. In 0.3.3, we have a further discussion on risk-based thinking, again defining it and explaining its importance. And then in 0.4, we have a discussion of the linkage between 9000, 9004, and 9001. We discussed sections 1, 2, and 3 earlier, but here they are again in terms of the role that they play within the content of the standard. We've already reviewed 4 through 10, so let's jump ahead a bit and have a look at Annex A. Now, I think for a lot of you, you're going to find Annex A to be an extremely helpful document. There's a lot of verbiage in here that's going to help you set up your systems, and I feel is also going to help settle disputes between clients and auditors if things are at an impasse. Section A1, structure and terminology. It enforces the doctrine that you do not have to align your documentation to match 9001-2015, and you do not have to use the specific terms that are found in the standard. So some slides ago we were talking about external providers. If you want to keep calling them suppliers, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. You do not have to change your procedure or anything else to start calling them external providers. Annex A2 discusses a little bit further the intent in changing the references of product to read as products and services. Annex A3 is a thorough discussion on the needs and expectations of interested parties and defines the term, the definition that we looked at. In Annex A4, we've got an extensive section on risk-based thinking, and it emphasizes, and this is key, that a formal structure or process for risk management is not required. So again, it's written right into the standard itself that you're not required to have a formal process for it, and that's found in A4. In A5, we have a discussion on the logic for removing the term exclusions and the new concept of non-applicables. We had a look already at A6 on the discussion of documented information. That's where you'll find maintained and retained, as we looked at earlier. Annex A7 talks about organizational knowledge. This is actually a term that's used in the standard itself. The annex provides an explanation on requirements that pertain to competency and ongoing competency. And then finally, we have A8. As we looked at earlier, this is a discussion on what they mean by external providers and who they mean by that and who it applies to. Standard then concludes with Annex B, which is a further discussion on the relationship between 9001 and the various support standards, and then the standard concludes with a bibliography. Now, as to whether or not you need to overhaul your current system, our analysis on this is no. You do not have to overhaul your current system. Don't forget, TC 176 wanted to improve the inclusiveness of the standard. If you tell over 1 million worldwide certified companies that they have to overhaul their system, that's not inclusive. So they were very mindful of that when they wrote this standard and developed the new requirements. So what does this mean? Well, among other things, we've been talking now about the documentation requirements and the documentation structure. If you have a quality manual and a procedures manual that are benefiting your system in some way, if you use them every day, if you use them once a month, whatever the case may be, if you feel that your quality manual and your procedures, that these things are effective and that they benefit your system, keep them. Absolutely keep them. The same goes with your quality policy, your objectives, and so forth. You do not need to overhaul those items to meet the new requirements of the standard. Let's have a look at some FAQs that have come up in past presentations, and perhaps some of your questions will be answered by these items. Will our staff have to complete transition training? It's going to depend a bit on the extent of the revisions that you've made to your system, but generally, yes, you will have to provide some form of transition training. Our expectation at minimum would be that you provide awareness training and make folks aware that things are changing and you're transitioning. obviously it's conceivable that the majority of your staff is going to feel no effect from your transition. You know, you think about the people that are out there running machines every day. For them, it's going to be business as usual under the new standard. Really, this only impacts the leadership team to a great degree. What about your internal auditors? Do they have to complete transitional training? What you need to remember about internal auditing is that it's viewed in exactly the same light as any other competency within your system. And that is, you as an organization are responsible for determining what are the required competencies and what it means to be competent. You'll have to decide for yourself what it means for your auditors to be ready to audit to the new standard. Now, if you have a team of auditors that have been doing what they do for a number of years, they know your system well, it's entirely conceivable that they could do a period of self-study and be ready to audit the new standard. Now, obviously, as we move along and get going with transition auditing, the competency of your auditors will continue to be judged by the overall effectiveness of the audit process. We've been asked if the other standards are going to be updated as well. We know for sure that TS 16949, AS 9100, and TL 9000 have all indicated their intention to transition and continue their alignment with ISO 9001. We also know that all three of those standards are at present targeting 2016 for publication. And then finally, on this topic, we know that ISO 13485 is not planning to continue its alignment with ISO 9001. They have broken away from the 9001 standard, and they're in the midst of their own write-up on a new standard, and they're actually targeting early 2016 for publication. Should we get certified now or wait? Now, we've had a number of clients, perhaps some on our call today, that are presently implementing this system. And you're wondering, well, should we keep going with this? Should we transition with this? We're getting to where this is going to be a crucial decision for you. Now, obviously, bear in mind that 9001-2008 still has a little over 2.5 years of usability left in it. Bear in mind also that the first round of audits that we're going to be doing to the new standard will be a bit more challenging. But we are at a point now where you need to make a decision, should you continue with 9001-2008 or transition. In my professional opinion, at this stage, there is still some benefit in being certified to 9001-2008 and realizing the fruits of your efforts. But obviously, that final decision is yours to make. In terms of steps that you can take right now, we do like to promote the IAF informative document number 9, which recommends a 7-step process. First and foremost, obviously, make sure that you have a copy of the standard. It's incredible how many companies out there attempt certification without getting their hands on a copy of the actual standard. So do make a point of getting the standard and reviewing it to identify any gaps that you need to address. Write out a plan of implementation. Update your documents if necessary to reflect any new or revised processes. Make sure that you've provided awareness and transition training to your staff. Have a full system internal audit followed by management review. And be sure that you've implemented your corrective actions for any internal audit findings. And at that point, bring PJR in to help you plan your official transition. Again, I've emphasized this a couple times, but I really want to be sure that I'm hitting this point home. With your documentation, always remember that it needs to work for you first and foremost. Now, if renumbering it, if retitling it, if realigning it so that it matches up with 9001:2015 means that your documentation works better for you, that's fine. But it is not going to be mandatory. We would also hope that you will work with your auditors and allow them to help you. Many of you have got auditors that have been coming to your facility for many years. They know your processes, they know your people. We want you to work with your auditors. We are working diligently to make sure that our auditors are transitioned and ready to audit you to the new standards. We definitely are taking very careful steps to make sure that our auditing staff is ready to go with this new standard. This is definitely exciting, an exciting time for quality system certification. 9001:2015, it's a good standard. It's a well-written standard. We definitely feel very strongly that it's going to benefit the people that use it. We will absolutely continue to provide you with timely updates on the transition process. We're going to make sure that our clients have as smooth a transition as possible. Quick update on the support standards. The 9000:2015 standard was also published on September 15th of this year. It is also available for purchase. It is called Fundamentals and Vocabulary, and it's a non-certifiable standard. It's intended to be information only, but it provides a number of key points of information. All sanction definitions are found in 9000. The 7 quality management principles are found there, and a series of concept diagrams are provided that show the intended interrelationship of ideas. Now, as for 9004 and 19011, these both remain at their current revisions for now. We have no information on any imminent updates to either of those two standards, but obviously we will keep you posted if that changes. We've provided a couple of reports that we think are going to be beneficial to our clients. They include a side-by-side comparison between 9001:2008 and 9001:2015. We've also worked up an FAQ report highlighting key questions and answers. Those are both available to you right on our website at www.pjr.com. I'd also like to make you aware of a couple additional webinars that we have. The 9001:2015 Critical Points of Review during the Transition Audit Process webinar is also delivered once a month. We have another presentation of that item yet to come this month. That one is a deep dive into the new areas represented by 9001:2015 and discusses how they're going to be assessed during the transition audit itself. And we're going to be debuting a new webinar next month called The Interaction of Processes and Its Importance to a Successful Audit. This webinar, it's a shorter one, but it explores the crucial topic of processes and how to correctly understand them. And we're excited about this new webinar. We do feel that it's going to be beneficial to our clients. We do want to keep in touch with you, and there's a real easy way for us to do that. If you visit our website and go all the way to the bottom, give us your email address and click subscribe. You'll be automatically opted in for email updates on new webinars or other information of interest to you. So give us a chance to keep in touch with you. Okay, that concludes my presentation for today. I'm going to go ahead and expand the question dashboard and see what kind of questions we have today. Okay, Bud Salisbury asked the question, please address risk-based thinking, which is actually risk management, and how we should pursue it. How will it be audited? Well, Bud, I do believe that we've discussed that to a certain extent, but in a couple of things to reemphasize here. First of all, bear in mind that you are not required to have a formal system for risk-based management, or for risk-based thinking. The expectation is that risk-based thinking is going to be a component of your existing processes. And again, a couple of things that we highlighted in our presentation. We talked about management review. We talked about preventive action. We talked about looking at ongoing competency needs. We talked about having a careful review process for incoming orders. These are all things that are going to be looked at as evidence of risk-based thinking. We've structured our audit report in such a way that it asks a very open-ended question, and it directs the auditor to inquire, is there evidence of risk-based thinking within the processes of this organization? So again, not a formal structure. This is something that is very much looking at existing processes, and there's a number of things that companies are likely already doing that meet this requirement. Okay, Leon Gracia asks, how can we manage the concept not applicable? There are a number of ways that can be done. As of right now, what's expected is that you will write your permissible exclusions into your quality manual document. That will continue to be an acceptable strategy for doing this. If you prefer to draw it up in a different way, that's fine as well. But the expectation will be that it's documented in some way where it can be reviewed and verified. Okay. Paul Lenhart asks, where are the 16 times where risk is auditable in 2015? Well, I don't have a definitive list to read to you, Paul, but what I can tell you is that the term risks, that term is called out, as I said, 16 times within the standard itself. Now, it doesn't mean that we're going to be looking for 16 points of risk management. What it means is that, as I mentioned, risk-based thinking is now a system-wide strategy. It's not a formal structure by itself. It's intended to be something that exists within your processes. Okay, we're getting some questions about getting copies of today's presentation. We will absolutely have this up for re-review shortly after it's been concluded. You'll also be able to get access to the slides. Okay, we have a question from Chuck McGill. We are starting from zero. We have a customer requirement to be AS9100 certified in 2016. Would you suggest that we follow the current standard based on 2008 or jump to 2015? And is AS9100 going to allow us to, before it recognizes this, until mid next year? Chuck, I can absolutely assure you that if you need to be AS9100 certified in 2016, if this is a mandate, your best course of action is going to be to pursue AS9100C. The 9100 standard, the AS9100 standard, according to our most current information, we're looking at mid-spring for that document to be published. I wouldn't put it off. I would just tell yourself that you're going to certify to AS9100C in 2016 and transition then in 2018. That would be my suggestion to you. Charles Hambley, can one rely on PFEMA for a process to assess and address risk? Charles, in principle, I don't see anything wrong with using FEMA as a strategy for showing that you're using risk-based thinking as part of your process. I would just hasten to add that don't limit your thinking on risk management to just production. There's opportunities to avoid risks and enhance opportunities in more places than just your production area. But in principle, there's certainly nothing wrong with using a FEMA strategy. Okay. Okay. Okay, well, we appear to have answered everyone's questions today. I do want to thank you all for your time, and I do hope that you have found our presentation today to be beneficial. Have a good day.